Hello and welcome. My name is Meepolis and this is Literally Graphic. And today is an emergency arc review. When I requested the book on NetGalley, I failed to see just how soon it was coming out, and my stats don't need to be any worse. Today we are looking at Guantánamo Voices, true accounts from the world's most infamous prison by Sarah Mirk and a variety of illustrators. This book is being published by Abrams Comics Arts on September 8th, 2020. Warning for torture, obviously. According to her Goodreads profile, Sarah Mirk is a social justice-focused writer and artist. She has worked at The Stranger, the Portland Mercury, Bitch Media, and hosted the Propaganda podcast, which I did not make the mental connection, but listened to for its entire run. Cool. She is also the author of Sex from Scratch, Making Your Own Relationship Rules, which are rated 4 out of 5 stars. Whoa, did not realize I had such a history with this author. In the order they are listed on the back of the book, Gerardo Alba is a cartoonist from Mexico City who lives with his wife and 2 cats in New Jersey. Kasia Babis is a Polish cartoonist and political activist. Alexandra Buguez is a Cuban-American illustrator and cartoonist based in New Jersey. Tracy Chawan is a comic book artist and illustrator whose first graphic novel, Beirut, Bloody Beirut, sounds very interesting. Nomi Kane is alumna of the Center for Cartoon Studies who lives in Oakland, California with her dog Dino. Omar Khoury is a co-founder of Samandal Comics, the first experimental comics periodical in the Arab world. Kazimir Lee developed the color palette for this book and is also a queer parent, pornographer, and journalist. Kane Lynch is a cartoonist based in Portland, Oregon. Maki Naro is an award-winning cartoonist, illustrator, and science communicator. Hazel Nulevant is a Portland-raised, Queens residing cartoonist who has done some graphic novels on my TBR list. Jeremy Nguyen is an illustrator living in New York. Chelsea Saunders is a freelance illustrator residing in New York. The official description of this book on NetGalley is, in January 2002, the United States sent a group of Muslim men they suspected of terrorism to a prison in Guantánamo Bay. They were the first of roughly 780 prisoners who would be held there, and 40 inmates still remain. 18 years later, very few of them have been ever charged with a crime. In Guantánamo Voices, journalist Sarah Mirk and her team of diverse, talented graphic novel artists tell the story of 10 people whose lives have been shaped and affected by the prison, including former prisoners, lawyers, social workers, and service members. This collection of illustrated interviews explores the history of Guantanamo and the world post 9/11, presenting this complicated partisan issue through a new lens. Besides her own trip to Guantánamo Bay, Sarah Mirk highlights Mark Fallon, former chief of Middle East counterintelligence operation for NCIS, Matthew Diaz, former Navy judge, advocate general, Corps officer, lawyer, and 20-year veteran, Mozambique, educator and Guantanamo prisoner 558, February 2003 to January 2005, Thomas Wilner, attorney representing Guantanamo prisoners, Colonel Morris Davis, 25-year Air Force veteran and chief prosecutor for Guantanamo Bay, military commission September 2005 to October 2007, Mansour Adefi, Guantanamo prisoner 441, February 2002 to July 2016, Alka Pradhan, human rights lawyer and attorney for Guantanamo prisoners, Shelby Sullivan Bennis, attorney for Guantanamo prisoners, and Katie Taylor, deputy director of reprieve and coordination of the Life After Guantanamo project. As far as art goes, the variety of artists does mean that it varies a bit, but not very noticeably. Everything is semi-realistic with minimal lines and expressiveness. The color scheme was apparently planned ahead of time. Mark said she was going for a sunset feel to contrast the harsh nature of the material. I felt like some of the typographical coloring was a bit off, but honestly, Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me also did this, so this is not very unique. As far as gender and sexuality, neither was a particular focus of the book, but there are some pretty hardworking, apparently women IDing people highlighted in this volume. The social constructs of race and citizenship were highlighted in this volume because of the ways it affected people's ability to get out of Guantanamo. We also see some examples of the way immigration from, quote, Western countries back to your family's country of origin is feared by those in charge of this whole thing. Obviously, racism is at the heart of the entire U.S. response to 9/11, and the number of times that people in charge of this whole thing assert that no one could be innocent is terrifying. Class was also not a focus of the work, and I feel like being locked up in Guantanamo removes you somewhat from class hierarchy into a new dreadful hierarchy. At least according to this book, people's treatment mostly went back to their citizenship and race more so than class. The one intersection I feel like more could have been done with is the ability versus disability. Torture is pretty hard on the body, and on top of displacing these people even after they leave Guantanamo, I'm sure it has pretty measurable physical and mental impacts on how people continue to live. There's some hint of that, but I would have appreciated more frank discussion. That said, the parts of the book covering prisoners appear to follow what they wanted to talk about, so that's a limitation I can't really argue with. Similarly, I was a bit surprised that Omar Khadr was not covered, as he was a minor held at Guantanamo. That said, perhaps he didn't want to be involved, which is legit. Back in 2018, I did read a book also about Guantánamo Bay entitled Aaron and Ahmed. Apparently I never reviewed it, so I should probably revisit that. There's also a graphic novel entitled Guantanamo Kid, the true story of Mohammed al-Gharani, that I should aim to pick up soonish. But circling back to Guantánamo Voices, I'll be honest that I was perhaps a bit skeptical this might turn into another liberal, both sides, quote, objective journalism. But at least by my measure, which is not the be-all, end-all, it did go beyond, opening with a historical overview of the military base and Mirk's own experience visiting, the evolution of what we knew about torture before the, quote, war on terror that got thrown out the window, and how convinced so many people were of the guilt of all the prisoners. The fact that those people, even after it's proven they have no right to hold them, are fearful to release these people because they might take revenge. The critical lens is strong with this one. This book is very well timed in how we got so close to closing, and now these last few people are still arbitrarily detained, even as the, quote, issue has fallen into the background because so much crap is going on. I think I will be rating this book 5 out of 5 stars. Bye y'all, keep reading and resist white supremacy. And as always, Literally Graphic is recorded on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation. I live here because of British colonization, Indigenous genocide, and more geographically specific, Treaty 13, also known as the Toronto Purchase, which was finalized in 1805 between representatives of the Crown and certain Mississauga peoples. This treaty was a lie and has since been broken many times over. Saying so reflects only my own small steps towards knowing the truth and does nothing for reconciliation.